Hey guys, Nate here with a Race Day Quads build video. This is the Race Day Quads full ready to go kit for the Tiny Whoop. It's going to consist of the Eachine 3-in-1 camera, the Eachine frame, the new Power Whoop connector, this is a nice big one here, the B-Core F3 Evo flight controller, Eachine propellers, nice, great, fast, very fast propellers, motors, the little wedge for making the batteries fit in there, and of course the camera mount and batteries. So let's get started with the unboxing. So let's go ahead and open up here. Look at that little guy. So yeah, this is a great little camera. It is tiny, and I love how it's got the LCD screen in the back here. So that way we can kind of see exactly if we're on F3 or E2 or whatever it may be. Inside here we also have a little attachment. We're not going to use that in this build. It's got a different connector than what we're going to be using, so we'll set that aside. We're going to be clipping off this end and attaching it directly to the power leads of the B-Core. The frame we're not going to mess with right now. Batteries, we'll get to all of this in just a minute, but we're going to start with the basics. So the first thing we're going to do is let's unbox everything. So again, the only thing left with a box here is the B-Core. Nice little connector. These are the rubber grommets. And then of course the B-Core itself. There it is. Alright. So let's rip this bad boy open. See what we get. So the B-Core comes with a connector, but we are going to disregard this connector. We are not going to be using this connector. It comes with some double-sided foam, sticky foam. We're going to hold off on that for now. So then next thing we're going to need is right here the Eachine frame. Now, the first thing that I want to kind of show you is that we're going to need to do some modification to this frame. So what I keep is just a handy pair of side cutters, very thin-walled side cutters. And what we're going to do is we're just going to open this up. And what we're going to open it up for is the batteries that everybody uses, whether it's a 210 battery, a 205, 255, they're all this thin size. Now, this one does have the Power Whoop connector, which we're going to be adding on here. But you know, it doesn't fit in this slot. So first of all, it'll bump up against it. It's not going to fit. And second of all, it's not going to be able to slide all the way in, and it's too narrow. So all the Eachine frames, they come with these guys here. All the Race Day Quads kits come with this little guy here. And what this does, it kind of fills it in. Very light, very extremely light foam. It's going to add nothing to your weight, but allow you to fit the more narrow things in here. So like I said, the first thing we're going to do is need to clip this off. Let me just move this aside here. So it's not very difficult just to come in here, clip that off. And get a little bit more. So I'll just pop that piece off so I can bend this down. Pop it off. Simple clips. You could do it with a pair of scissors if you wanted to. I just find that these give you great leverage. And just cleaning it up. Done. That's all the modification to the frame you're going to need to do. The next thing you're going to do is we're going to take this foam piece here, and we're actually going to just kind of do this weird like fold in half this way and then fold it back on itself again. Let's see if I can do this here. There we go. And what this will allow, kind of makes like an M almost. Hopefully you guys can see that okay. And then what you can do is just slide this right in here, and when you do it with this M trick, it just lays out. Boom, it's in place. Now your battery will fit nice and snug, and these edges have little hooks. Oh yeah, that's not going anywhere. That's a great fit. Has little hooks right here in the foam to kind of capture that side. Very convenient and easy. So let's go ahead and take out this battery. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to be dropping in these motors. Now, what's great about these upgraded motors is that you're going to get better flight time, better performance, more aggressive on acro, and I highly recommend everybody get the upgraded motors versus the stock ones that would come with the the standard inductrix. So what we can see here is we're going to choose the back. Now, see, this is our antenna here for the receiver. This is the upside down, so the motors plug into the bottom. So what we can see here is we're looking for the arrows pointing to the front. So this is in the back left. So what we're going to do is this is going to be mounted like so. Okay, because the arrows are pointing forwards to the front. And we can see here that we need our soft mounts, which are right here. Here they are. So the B core comes with all the soft mounting kits you need. It's got the screws in here. Let's dump it out and kind of show this here. Okay, so it comes with all the screws we'll need. Comes with these soft rubber O-rings to kind of help with everything here. And one thing about these B rotor and any of the other Betaflight, this one's, I'm sorry, B core, Betaflight based F3 brushed flight controllers is that you're gonna need to know which side to put your motors. Blacks are ones that spin. Black and red are ones that like to spin, which way is this? This would be counterclockwise. So I'm going to put this in the front right and back left. And this blue and red want to spin clockwise. So that's going to go like that. Okay. So we'll just slide these in. So this is pretty easy to do. All right, what we're going to do is just slide in these first. One thing that's nice about this ES-Sheen frame over the stock Inductrix frames is this is stiff plastic. The Inductrix, if you try to push these in, sometimes they'll collapse. And I find that this plastic is much more rigid and gives you a much better feel for the actual plastic, right? It doesn't feel like it's going to bend and break on you just by pushing in a simple motor. These motors are difficult to push in. Make sure you're not messing with the shaft, because that way you're trying to grab it by the base, try to push it in here. It's going to take some time. There we go. So remember, blue and red go in the front left and back right. Okay, that's it for motor installation. So now that that's done, we'll just move this aside for now. We'll start focusing on our flight controller. So what we can see here on the flight controller, I'll just scoot everything over a little bit here, is that we have two circles in the back of the flight controller. If you flip it around to the bottom, one says GRND, that's this guy here, and that is going to be our ground, and VCC is our voltage in. So what I like to do is I like to give myself a little bit of room, and so I'm going to give myself about 6 centimeters or about 2 1/4 inches of space. And what this will do is allow you to wrap around, just toss those, is allow you to wrap around nicely from the flight controller down to the batteries. And this gives you enough room for long batteries if you're running 255s, or short batteries. It'll give you a good distance to do. So just going to use some fingernails here. And we get our old trusty soldering iron. Let me grab some third hands to kind of hold everything for me. So here we go. Grab the solder. So a little solder technique for everybody. Shiny tip is really what you want, and that means keeping it wet, right? We always have a blob on there. So we're going to just touch it. Now the solder on the tip is just for heat transfer. It is not used for the soldering. Okay, the stuff on the tip is going to be wiped off you know, as soon as you're done with what you're doing. And always make sure you tin your ends here. And like I said, I always get a little on the tip, touch that just for the heat transfer, pull it over, and touch it up. So now, I'm ready to solder on. So I'm actually going to solder to the bottom here, but I'm going to put solder on both sides, and that's so that when I attach my camera here in a minute, I've got a nice solder bead on the top and the bottom. Good angles here. Not too much on my tip, but that's okay. Good. Okay, and I always like to store my soldering iron with little solder on the tip here as well. Okay, so we've got our stuff on the top and the bottom. Let's double check, bring back the frame to say, okay, the front was here. And so, are we going to have enough room? Yeah, we'll have plenty of room underneath there. So we're going to solder our battery lead to the bottom here. So again, GND is ground, so that's the black wire in DC. So just get a little wet, and we're just going to touch the two together. Good. Same thing with the red wire and the VCC spot. Now, just make sure nothing is touching. Okay. If you have some solder points, just clip them off. You don't have to clip them off. I like to, if I have any solder points. Alright, and the other thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our camera, and we know that it's going to be positioned, right? We're going to have our guy right here. It's going to be positioned like this. And so this is going to be right here. Actually, sorry, it goes move that. Just like this. Give it a little tilt up. So we know we're going to need, and give yourself a little extra. A little extra doesn't hurt. Yeah, people complain about weight. It's not that big of a difference. You know, an extra 5 millimeters of wire. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to strip it. This is nice silicone wire, so it's not going to be too hard to just rip off with your fingernails. Don't be afraid to get this, you know, the solder when you're soldering, to just rip it out and put it in any shape you want. That's what I'm doing right here. Now if your leads are a little long like mine are, no problem. Just after they're tinned, just come back and trim them up just a little bit. Alright. So we're going to bring that third hands back here. I made this one. This is a homemade third hands. This is just an old GoPro tri-stand that I got off of eBay for like $3, and I went ahead and just secured it to this former 3-hands thing with a magnifying glass and a light. That's what I love about this hobby. You can make anything you want. Alright, so now we're just going to do the same thing. Now I'm not too worried about the heat transfer going through the board and desoldering the stuff on the bottom. The main reason for that is because I put my own blob on top, right? And my blob on top and blob on bottom. It's going to take a decent amount of heat to go through and desolder the bottom. So now we see we've got two good solid connections and ready to bring back our frame. Now, when we install this, I'm going to keep the camera back here for now during the installation process. We're actually going to slide these in. You can see this here. Now, it depends on which way you want to do this, or even if you want to cut it. These rubber standoffs, how they work is they slide into, right here, into that little slot. You notice that unlike most flight controllers, if you're used to big 250, 180 to 250 size, will have a solid ring. This is used to give a little bit of vibration isolation. And so you're going to have a screw go through the top, and now you've got this little rubber isolator. It fits nicely, and it helps a little bit with the vibration dampening, but you're going to be having a blast flying this thing around, not too worried about that. So we're going to grab this, slide it on, fight it for a little bit here, and slide this guy on. Now it looks like we might need to trim some off. You don't have to trim it off. The original Inductrix ones, they have the exact same thing, except for they are not, I don't know if you can see that, hopefully you can, they are not taller on one side than the other side. So we can just take this and trim it up to make it even. You can do this with a pair of scissors. And now all I did is I just kind of made it even on either side. I could trim a little bit more. Okay, one's done. Haven't decided if I'm going to do that yet. Alright, so now I've got these guys here, right? Make sure to watch your arrows on which way is forward. And I like to put this bridge in the back. Kind of makes some sense on what to do. Alright, so, and then what we're going to do is we're going to just slide this in the front, slide this here. Now you got to be careful because these little dampeners are going to want to fall off. Like crazy. Okay, so now it's roughly in place, and you'll notice that the mounting holes that we're not using the back one, and that's because again this is the Eachine E10 frame, and that's originally meant for the Eachine flight controller, and we're not using that. But what we do have is these little screws. Let me grab my tool here. Little tiny screw driver. You can do one at a time, but you got to remember that we have to include our mounting plate. So what we can see here, I wonder if you guys can see it from the side. You see one side is taller than the other side, and what that's going to do, that's your front, right? Because you're going to want that little bit of angle. That taller side is going to set you back, and you're going to want just a little bit of angle. So we're just going to have it just like this here. Okay, so things are not moving. Great. And now that's what we've got so far. Alright, next step, we can just grab, kind of tangled up down here, here it is, grab our camera, and this is just going to be kind of a press fit, right? So what we can do is give it a little flex here, just kind of work it in, right? It's a camera, it's delicate electronics, don't use a hammer. Looks pretty good. Okay. Next thing up is we're going to start connecting our motors. I like to put a little twist in here, and I like to twist it enough that I actually will start binding up and causing these loops here. And what you can do is you can twist it around and come out. This I probably will need needle nose pliers, or at least some tweezers to line up your slot. Now each of the motors are just going to go into their corresponding, there's no crisscrossing or anything, to their corresponding slot here. Right? So now we're just going to do that on all of them. Just give them a twist. And now we're ready to go ahead and attach our props, which just press on. I'm going to dump those out. Now we are going to do, right, if you look at it, they're all going to spin in towards the camera. So this guy, he's going to spin in towards the camera. So the reds are going to be the ones that are spinning the clockwise. And push them on. Don't get them too close because you don't want to get any binding in there. This one is also a spinning in towards the camera. In towards the camera on the front and the back is what I mean to say on that. So now we just push it down. So again, spinning in towards the camera when you're with respect to the front and the back here. And the black and the white do the same. Be careful not to bend the shafts here. And we can take this antenna, which is the receiver antenna, and just tuck it under somewhere. Just get it out of the way. Move it under, tuck it under the edge. Okay. Alright guys, on to the next phase, which is going to be binding to the taranis and the setup and configuration in clean flight. So the first thing we're going to do is turn on our taranis. We're going to hit the menu button and we're just going to scroll down to an empty spot, could be your next spot, create a model. Come on over to the quad. And we're just going to leave this. Channel 1 is our throttle, channel 2 is our roll, channel 3 is our pitch, channel 4 is yaw. And we're going to long hold the enter key for confirm, and it's done. So now we're going to come up to our, hit the page button to go to the next page, is page 2, which is model setup. We can give it a name here by hitting the enter key and giving it a name. So I'm just going to give it R, push and hold to make capital. Not RQ. RDQ. Okay. Hit exit to exit the name. Come down to, these are all the default settings. We're going to set this to mode D8. So I just hit the enter key to select it and then hit the up arrow to select D8. Okay, and we're going to come down and be ready for the bind key. Now what we're going to do for the bind is actually going to be in this front corner. Let me pull off this camera here. In this front corner, there's white words that say bind, and then there's two little tiny pads. And what we can do is take our soldering iron and a little bit of solder, and we can merge those pads. Right? There's not a lot of electronics around there. Okay. And there's not a lot of electronics, so you don't need to worry about that. Or you can use a pair of tweezers and hold it. Try to bridge those. You're basically trying to bridge those two tiny pads. So now, with that crossed, what we're going to do is we are going to push the bind button. It's going to start beeping. And with those bridged, you don't need to worry about holding or pushing anything, and connecting the power. Okay? It's going to blink. And give it just a second, and then we can turn off the bind and unplug, and we should be bound. Let's go ahead and take a look at the computer and make sure that we see everything. You got to repeat the process of binding either through the solder or through bridging this until you get a successful bind. And let me show you how we get a successful bind over on the computer. Okay, so I have bound my new tiny whoop, and I have plugged in the USB from the flight controller to the machine, and it's going to auto detect which port it thinks it is. In my case, I'm on a Mac, so it's calling it 411. So we click connect, and what we want to do is come over to the receiver tab, and if everything is good, we'll start to see I'm moving the left stick, which is throttle, and then yaw left, yaw right of the stick. I'm moving forwards in my pitch, backwards in my pitch, left stick, or left roll, right roll. So every direction looks good. But what we can see here is that it looks like we're good on all directions. It's just that we're off by our endpoints. And let me show you how to fix that as well. So what we can see here is what we need to do in the receivers tab is get everything as close to 1500 as we can with regards to pitch, roll, and yaw. So we're going to do that through a sub trim. So we're going to click menu, and we're already on our RDQ, which was our guy we selected. We're going to go to page 7, which is the outputs page. And I'm going to start with number 2 here. I'm going to come over to the one that says sub trim. We hit enter. And if we watch over here, we can see that as I increase this, my numbers increase on my roll, and as I decrease this, my numbers decrease on my roll. So I want to get this right around 1500. Okay? So now we're going to do the same thing, backing out, going to the next one, and we're going to start messing with this guy. So we're going to come down, and this is our pitch. A little too far. Alright, good. And now, we're going to do the same thing for our yaw. Come down. A little bit more. Okay. And now, everything looks good. The next thing we need to see is our minimum and maximum. So if we start with our yaw, 1007 to 1025. So what that leads, oops, let me go back a page. So what that's going to mean is that our minimum is too high. Not going to let us go any lower, but if I were to do the left here, you can see it's going up. So we can't go any further lower, so that's okay. But our maximum is going to be the next one here. We want to lower that down. We're at about 2000. There we go. So that helps us out here. So now we're going to go on to the next one, which is our number 3. Which is here. So our min, we said we couldn't go any lower, but our max is 225. So we can go over 1, and we can lower that down. So we get to 2000, a little too far. There we go. Good. It's close to 1000 and 2000 as you can get. Go back up, do the same thing. Sorry. For our roll. So 1027, we're going to roll that down. Nope, way too far. 2000. So now we've set our endpoints, but that kind of messes up our sub-trim, so we'll go back and correct our sub-trim a little bit. Again, getting as close to 1500 as we can. Good. Okay, and our yaw 1501, that's good. So good. So now we've got our sticks moving in all the right directions. If they weren't moving in the right directions, you would still be on this page number 7. You would just switch this arrow pointing from the right to the left. So for example, if I switch that, this was channel 3, which is my pitch. So my pitch, you see now, when I go forwards, is backwards. And when I go backwards, it's forwards. Well, that's not correct. I need to switch it. When I go forwards, it's supposed to go forwards, and backwards goes backwards. All right. Looks good. So now we're all set. If you were to kind of navigate through these, you don't need to really worry about anything on the setup and ports page. The configuration will help you if you wanted to change your minimum throttle or disarm or arm the motors, having them spin. If you put on your board incorrectly, if let's say you turned it 90 degrees, you would do your yaw 90. If you need to make any corrections, really you don't need to do anything here. PID tuning is kind of an advanced feature. If your quad feels like it's kind of sluggish, you can try increasing P on your pitch and roll until you start seeing some vibrations when doing any giving some throttle. If you feel it shaking or you can see it shaking in the goggles, you could lower your PIDs. That's a whole discussion in itself. Arming. Okay, so if we see here, we have what we need to do is we need to send two auxiliaries. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over to the receivers tab, and I don't think we have any switches or anything set. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here, say menu, and we're going to page over until we see page number 5. We're going to say the number 5. We don't need to give it a name. You can go ahead and click the source and flick a switch. We're going to make this one our ARM, and I like SA for ARM. So now we're sending SA, it's 100% of its value, as number 5, and number 6, I'm going to say SD. This is to turn on and off self-level mode for me. Alright, so now what we need to do is send them. So that was configuring them. So now we're just going to say that we are going to S5. We're just coming over to the switch section. And now if we look over here on our on the page here, we can see that aux1 and aux2, if I do the SA switch, is my aux2, which we said was channel 5. And if I do my SD switch, this is my going to be my self-level versus acro mode switch. Okay, looks good. So now we can come down to modes, and I can say my ARM switch is going to be when my aux1 is high, and my self-level I'm going to change to aux2. Right? We can see the values moving here. Okay. I'm going to change to aux2, and I'm just going to narrow these down a little bit. So if I hit save, what we can see is I like to have it when I switch down, it's going to arm my quad, which is good. That little arrow goes into the green. And then when I want to put on self-level, so by default it's in acro mode, and then when I want to go into self-level mode, I pull that forward, it puts me into self-level mode. That's how you assign switches. Again, it's just pages 5 and 6, making sure that channel 5 and 6 are sending the appropriate switch data. That is about it for clean flight. Now we're ready to plug in a battery and go take it for a flight.